Welcome, Sara. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm so happy to be here.
What was the trigger to make you come back to Pakistan?
Started to realize that there is a lot more opportunity here. And because of technology, things have become easier. If you have moved to Pakistan 2017 onwards because of the deep mobile connectivity.
How did you bridge between the media and the Invest to Innovate?
It's actually an ecosystem support organization. It has been active in Pakistan since 2011. We have supported over 1,200 founders.
Welcome, Sara. I'm so happy to have you. Like my second female guest here in this season of Wasssl podcast in Pakistan.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm so happy to be here.
Happy to have you here in Karachi. Even it's a crazy city. We were just talking about it. Even me coming from Casablanca, which is one of the busiest cities in Morocco. Karachi is nothing next to it.
Yeah. The scale.
Morocco in one city.
The scale, the chaos, I think the opportunity, but then also the infrastructure.
That reminds me of Cairo, by the way.
I think that's maybe a closer, more. No, but I've heard.
It's for me,
I've heard.
Karachi has so much similarity.
Energy also?
Sorry?
Similar energy also?
I think. I haven't been much in the energy side. Even I go to Cairo mostly for the ecosystem, the technology, the people.
But people who live in Karachi like to joke that living in Pakistan is an extreme sport, but living in Karachi takes it a notch further. And I've lived in New York for 7 years, but the reason I never struggled in New York was because I grew up here. Everything felt similar, immigrant rich, crazy, chaotic, business friendly. You could make anything out of what you have. And I think Karachi has a very similar vibe as well.
Okay. So I started by first question that I'm asking every guest. So why are you doing what you're doing today? It can be on personal, professional level, and mix.
Good question. I also ask myself that very often. Why am I doing what I'm doing? But I'll just backtrack a little bit and give you my backstory. So I'm a journalist by profession. I've been one for nearly 15 years. I've worked at almost all of the leading media houses in Pakistan, and then moved to New York, where I worked in the intersection of tech and content. And what I mean by that is that I've always gravitated towards innovation. So I worked at Meta, I worked at Twitter, always on their news teams. And I was fascinated by how technology.
And Facebook has news team.
Yes, they had. Okay. Yeah, I was part. Yes. Meta discontinued it eventually because there was a lot of controversy about them being partisan. So did Twitter after Elon Musk acquired it, but I was part of the Twitter news team for 3 years.
Okay.
I was looking after their political beat while Donald Trump was in power, and he was using Twitter in unprecedented ways. So that was really interesting. But I think what's been common in my career is I always want to be around smart people, and I always want to be in innovative spaces where people are either working on something new or they're looking at traditional problems with an innovative lens. So I moved back to Pakistan, peak COVID 2020.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I can't go back to the media here because nothing had changed. And I've seen so much in the US. So at that time, both talent and capital were moving in the innovation ecosystem. So I decided to leverage my skills. And I started advising a few startups here and in North America. Then went on to become part of the founding team at Imperfect, which is a women's health and wellness startup. And then Invest to Innovate happened by accident 2 years ago, which I'd been following their work for a while because Kulsum is very active online. I've always looked up to her, even when I was part of the diaspora there. So always appreciated their work, but wasn't really looking for this position. It just kind of worked out, and I've been helping founders for the past 2 years.
Amazing. What was the trigger to make you come back to Pakistan? Just fed up of US life?
No, not at the time. I think I moved back to be closer to my family because COVID had just made things a lot tougher. Yes, I had aging parents at home, so wanted to be closer to them. But then when I came back here, after a year or so, I started to realize that there is a lot more opportunity here in terms of like things that can be moved, because there's like literally there's a problem at every corner that needs to be solved. So if you are somebody who's smart and who doesn't mind working in broken or incomplete systems, you can really make a lot out of the population size here, you know, how fast we're growing digitally, you know, financial inclusion, education, health, literally everything needs to be solved.
That's exactly actually when we were talking off camera, like what brought you to Pakistan.
Yeah.
It's exactly this. When I arrived first time in 2021, I was, okay, actually this country, we can do everything.
Yes.
From products to services to whatever you think of, there is everything that can be reworked and rethink.
And because of technology, like things have become easier. You know, like if you have moved to Pakistan 2017 onwards, because of like the deep mobile connectivity, there's a lot more that you can do. Initially, I think when things were very physical, and you had to solve for physical infrastructure or physical systems, that obviously requires a different level of penetration. You know, you need different kinds of connections. But with technology, like literally anyone can be an entrepreneur. And I think that is what excites me the most about the market right now.
And how did you bridge like between the media and the invest to innovate, which is like, I see it actually, I discovered also myself like maybe I think 1 or 2 years back, invest to innovate through the research report you're doing. That I loved it. For me, it gives you really for a new entrant that doesn't know anything about the Pakistani ecosystem, a very clear view of what's happening, at least. So I see it as a research platform, as a media. How you define it?
No, it's actually an ecosystem support organization, which has been active in Pakistan since 2011. Till date, we have supported over 1,200 founders through our capacity building programs. We've helped mobilize almost $17 million in funding. And what we do is the North Star is to create as many founder success stories as possible. So that can be either through capacity building, through acceleration, through investment readiness, investor readiness. Then the other arm is the research piece, which is where we do a lot of primary and secondary research to kind of give anyone who's looking at the Pakistan market from either the outside or inside shared evidence-based truth, because data is very fragmented. You don't have any single source of truth. And to be able to make decisions about policy, about capital, about industries that you want to enter, you need reliable data. So not just the ecosystem report, but I2I also has the most exhaustive and oldest deal flow tracker, which has been tracking the funding movement in the ecosystem for the past decade or so. And then that becomes the basis for a lot of programs that international NGOs run, that entities like the World Bank come and implement locally. Yes. And they do use that research to kind of design programs. The same thing for the Pakistani government. And then it also helps us. We look at the gaps. And we reverse engineer our interventions based on the research that we do. And the other two pieces are policy and advocacy. So because we're in the innovation space, a lot of the work that we're doing is we're often the first player in that space, which means you also have to kind of make sure that the enabling environment for those kind of interventions exist. So advocating for, you know, easier repatriation of funds, more compliance-friendly regulations for founders. These are things that we get involved in. And lastly, everything that we do is through a community-based lens. So connecting founders to capital, connecting them to other ESOs, academia, corporate partners, family offices. So we're kind of that convener. Yeah, we are that convener that has multi-party trust. So we are able to bring all these players on the same page, under the same roof, and that's where a lot of these conversations around capital, around support, around ecosystem building tend to happen.
And yes, if you're still here, subscribe to the channel. It will help us a lot to grow, and it will mean the world to us.
It's very interesting what you're saying, because actually when I built also Wasssl Media, I built like as a TechCrunch for the MENA region.
Yeah.
Because I felt that there's like something missing. Yeah. We are always waiting for TechCrunch to talk about us.
Our region.
Bloomberg or whatever, that they have no idea what's happening.
Yes.
They are looking at us from the above and like, oh, actually Pakistani people are like this, Egyptian people are like this,
Yeah.
Moroccan company are like this.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, we need to own the narrative.
Yes. And there are so many local nuances that tend to get missed out because
Exactly.
when you zoom out, the story looks very different. But when you zoom in and are really on the ground, you can see what the trends are, why something is what it is. And we really, as a region and then also as a country, have to build our own narrative. We have to own our stories. Otherwise, we'll always be brushed under one
Exactly.
monolithic.
One thing.
Yes,
And
yes.
you cannot have a drone. I call it a drone view. You
Yes.
cannot have a drone view of our ecosystem.
Yes.
So, and it's very important that you're talking about the data and the research you're building, because I believe that so far our ecosystem is more an insight-based ecosystem than data-based ecosystem.
Yeah.
US and Europe has been building their data for the last 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
So when a startup will step in, let's say logistics, so she has that set of data that is already there. The digitalized economy has been for a long time.
Yeah.
But when like a company has to start in Pakistan or in Morocco, it's like a headache to get the data.
Yeah.
So it's more an insight based to like just collect the insight from entrepreneurs who has already done it.
Yes.
And we feel like also entrepreneurs, like they don't have this feedback loop. So everyone will have to do it from the scratch, from zero, right?
Yes, you have to keep reinventing the wheel, and then
exactly.
you also, I feel, unless you have data-driven decision making, you also can't truly be inclusive or democratic in your decision making, because like you're saying, if you're already working through insights, those insights tend to remain concentrated in certain parts of the country within certain power tiers. But if you're really to open up the ecosystem in a way that it needs to be able to benefit from the talent and the population that this country has, then you need hard numbers that can't be argued against, that anyone can opt in and opt out of.
Investors.
Exactly. And even for outside investors looking in, I think data is the first thing that helps make a case. If that data is missing, no amount of qualitative conviction can move that needle. So I feel like that's a very crucial gap that Invest to Innovate has been filling out successfully for a couple of years now.
Love the mission, love the mission. And since you came back from the US and you got in touch with like maybe Pakistani startups or Pakistani founders around the world, how did you see the ecosystem evolving post-COVID?
Oh, so much. Because since COVID, we had so it went like this, and there was a J curve, and now if you're purely talking about funding,
Right.
things really shot up in 21, 22, where we had that record $350 million raised, which was unprecedented. There was a lot of hype around what Pakistan was, what Pakistan offered. And then the favorite.
It was overvaluation also for a lot of startups, right?
I
At that
think,
moment.
yes. But also, like everything that hype drives, I think reality and maturity kind of gets left behind. And I feel like that period was very important because it kind of gave.
Reality check.
No, I think it gave us a sense of possibility. We realized what was possible here. We are capable of this. If we play our cards right, if we build sensibly, Pakistan is capable of attracting that kind of capital. I think what ended up happening was too much happened too soon, and we couldn't sustain it.
We're not ready.
Yeah, we were not ready for that. The ecosystem was not ready. But since then, I feel like people who've stayed and are now building are those that understand the long game. So the ecosystem is maturing. All of the fluff is kind of getting drawn out. All the builders that are now there are building sustainable businesses, and by that I mean from day one they understand that there needs to be a revenue model if you're to call it a business. The burn at all costs growth model is it doesn't work in a market like this. And then the same thing for investors.
But US, there is no burn.
Yes, I think that era is over, but we learned that lesson the hard way. Because I feel like when you are from an emerging economy, you're fighting multiple battles. You're fighting a PR battle, you're fighting an infrastructure battle, you're fighting a funding battle. So for
Acquisition battle.
exactly, so for us, the negative consequences of that in terms of like morale got multiplied manyfold. But since then, I think what's emerging is a much more mature ecosystem where the power is not in numbers, but in the depth of the industries that you're building in. Anyone who's either building a fintech or a mobility business or an e-commerce business, they understand the fundamentals of that industry. They understand the challenges. They also understand the opportunities. It's not like, oh, XYZ race.
They build a viable business from day one.
From day one, because they have the relevant expertise. They've either worked in that sector, they are either extremely passionate about that problem. So it's not, people are not following vibes anymore. It's not like, let's go build.
The trends.
Yeah, let's go build on trends. People are actually looking at what they can meaningfully run and sustain, and then the capital automatically follows.
Okay. Very important. So you are very optimistic on what's happening now on the Pakistani ecosystem. I think that it's happening on the next 5-10 years. It will really go crazy, and I see like some amazing talent, amazing startups, and you said like real builders, not only hype and pitch deck entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Only.
Yeah, you don't have like vibe-driven entrepreneurs anymore. It's actually people who have the grit and they understand that it's a tough market to build in, but then the returns that you can get in a market like this are also exponential. And you have a lot of advantages if you're operating out of Pakistan. You have a massive labor cost arbitrage. So you could really just build and test in Pakistan, but then also scale regionally. And if you look at the founders who have done well in the past 2 or 3 years, they've all followed a similar trajectory. They've validated their products having a base in Pakistan, using the population advantage that we have, and then kind of expanded to the Middle East or Saudi, and kind of also gotten that scale. Their market.
Investment and also
The market that they're serving. So I'm
mitigating the risk also in a country that's.
I think it's
like
really
valuation.
No, I think it's really leveraging the cost advantage that you have because of building in a cheaper or an emerging market. Labor is cheaper, setting up an office here is cheaper, technical talent is relatively cheaper if you were doing something similar, and then export to the world. Why not? And I am an optimist. I do think there is immense talent in this country. And if we were just enabled by the right environment, like Pakistanis are capable of so much. However, I'm also a realist, so I understand that there are challenges that need to be solved for if we are to grow sustainably. One of the key ones being we have a lack of early stage capital in the country. We have a lack of local
about angel investment.
Angel investors, yes. You need that first layer to de-risk for other bigger players to first $5,000, yes, to get things off the ground. And because we work with so many founders at various stages, that's also the stage where most founders tend to fail because they aren't able to sustain their business beyond those early stage where bootstrap isn't working, but you're also not big enough to go to a VC. You're not big enough to go to an institutional investor.
What revenue is not enough to fund the growth.
Exactly. What you need is that initial $3,000, $5,000 check, which is not coming. So one of the key initiatives.
$1,000 can change the
that's
for a founder.
That's the currency arbitrage that we have, right? Like
so 3,000, we're talking about 1 million.
Yes, and if you're looking for growth capital or working capital as a small business, 3,000 to 5,000 can really pull you through and get you ready to that point.
It's very interesting that you give these numbers because people are not aware. For example, in Morocco, the minimum will be like a 10 or 20 or $30,000.
We've been running. So in addition to getting startups investment ready, we've also been trying to mobilize investors and solve on the supply side. And that's the number we quote. It's like you can literally write your first check between $3,000 and $8,000, whatever you can afford. Obviously, companies tend to pool an investment, so maybe some might need something bigger. But as an individual angel, writing a $3,000 and $5,000 check, it's a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense, but movement over there is slower. Then obviously you need you need a fund of funds or something from the government that can help de-risk things from early on and encourage other bigger investors who are looking in to come into the country because they're often looking for a local lead or a state partner that takes the first move and they're happy doing the follow-ons. So I think on that side, we still have a lot of work to do. But again, I don't think this is unique to Pakistan. I think this is a teething problem. If you look at other emerging economies, if you look at Bangladesh, if you look at Nigeria, they've walked similar paths. So we have to make sure that we pivot as things change, as the ecosystem matures. Our focus should also adjust accordingly, because for the past 3 to 5 years there has been a lot of money and resources diverted towards capacity building of founders. But I think we've reached that point where we do have like a reasonable number of good founders. What we now need to start looking at is how do we match them with the right form of capital? How do we make sure that they're ready to absorb that money? How do we make sure that investors go in with the right mindset, understand what this market looks like, what return will look like? And that's what I2I has been doing for the past 2 years as well.
Amazing.
And yes, if you're still here, subscribe to the channel. It will help us a lot to grow and it will mean the world to us.
Amazing. That's like a big mission
Yes.
to get to ignite, I will say, the
But
ecosystem kind of thing.
it's very heartening to see that when we came to this conclusion, and through our ecosystem report, we've been pointing towards this gap of early stage capital, I would say, for the past 5 to 6 years.
The
But
problem is there is not the education. So there is
Yes.
a lot of money in Pakistan.
Yes.
People do not mistake. It's a very rich country.
Yes.
People have money,
yes,
but they don't have the education and the
and the systems, right?
system that
You
will
need-
allow these investment to goes in, and also the education to maybe invest in technology, because it's the industry of today and tomorrow.
Yeah. So I think the right education around both risk and opportunity is missing. Like you said, there's a lot of high net worth individuals in the diaspora that want to give back to
Yeah, it's
Pakistan.
even more.
Yes, but you have to build that system of syndication where there is transparency, where people understand exactly where their money is going, where they're able to come in and find the right kind of talent to invest in.
Right.
Because not all founders are ready to absorb that kind of money. So we've been trying to mobilize things on a local level, and the vision is that from these local chapters we kind of merge into a regional network, a national network, and then eventually try and get the diaspora to come in and also pull back their money, their time, their resources.
It's very hard because I was having a first podcast, Moroccan podcast, where I was talking to Moroccan diaspora around the world.
Yeah.
It's very hard to point them out,
Yeah.
digitally especially,
Yeah.
because they are everywhere,
Yeah.
apart from their name, because they are in London, they are in, I don't know, Netherlands, they
Yeah.
are in US.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to point them out and get to them. So it's like it has to happen organically with
Exactly. You should
network.
you can't be scouting people. You need to create
It's a network
a high
situation.
trust, high visible system or network or angel syndicate or an organization that these people can safely come in,
Yeah.
rely on, find deal flow, channel their money through them, and then also eventually, hopefully, get returns.
When we look at the regional ecosystem, like in Middle East, South Asia, Africa, what do you think the ecosystem that Pakistan can learn from, and what also Pakistan can give as a lesson to other ecosystems?
I think Bangladesh is a country that's very similar in terms of opportunity to Pakistan, but they had the government stepping in the form of like a government fund, which is called, I think, Startup Bangladesh. So that's
It helps a lot.
it helps de-risk that first layer, which is something that we're now starting to see with the Pakistan Startup Fund, which wants to write the first check for which wants to follow on a VC check into any entity, but that's a fairly recent thing. So I think in terms of things to learn from, the state intervention in Bangladesh is a good one. In terms of challenges, I think Nigeria is pretty similar in terms of like the devaluation of the currency, the size of the population. I think those are very similar. There's a lot of similar infrastructure issues
Also, I
over
feel
there.
like there is a lot of similarities
Yes.
between East and
In fact, Cairo Angels was one of the networks that we were studying when we were designing our angel investor intervention,
right.
because we felt like a lot of the realities that they went through
Matching, yeah.
a couple of years ago are similar to what Pakistan is experiencing right now. In terms of what Pakistan can teach other markets, I think what's emerging here is now a very organic ecosystem. It's not something that has been. We have tried importing formulas from the Silicon Valley, from more developed world, and they haven't worked. So now what we're trying, I think what Pakistan is going through is a period of evolution where we're not fully there, but what I believe will happen in the next 5 years is maybe we'll have a much more concentrated ecosystem, like not that big, smaller, but more rooted in local realities. And what I mean by that is the kind of businesses that will come out will be tied to problems that are native to this region, the solutions that will work in this region, the kind of capital instruments that will come out, whether that's more blended form of capital or more early stage of capital. That's again going to be like you were saying, I haven't heard of a $3,000 check, but for a market like Pakistan, maybe that's something that works. So
Game changing for someone's
yeah, and like
company.
yes, and given the country's realities, our currency fundamentals, that's a check size that works. So I think in the next 3 to 5 years, Pakistan, if we play our cards right, if we build that enabling environment, we might be a good example to quote in terms of a large market that built organic, authentic Pakistan first solutions.
Amazing. Actually, I got so much inspired, to be honest. I'm like discovering the ecosystem for the last 2, 3 years.
Yeah.
And Pakistan is doing far better than Morocco for the tech ecosystem.
In what sense?
In the sense of, I don't know if it's like an economy of scale, because maybe there's a lot of people, so they produce also much more like successful companies and successful and amazing talents. I mean, the founders are like just crazy what I have seen here. So maybe it's the scale also that makes them. And for me, like the Pakistani startups export really well. I've never seen yet a Moroccan startups going outside of Morocco. They still work mostly on Moroccan market.
Okay.
And maybe they will export a little bit to Europe, but not on the scale of Pakistan. So for me, definitely the Moroccan ecosystem has something to learn from. I can't point it out yet, but it has something to learn from, like maybe the resilience, the grit.
We now have like a few examples of Pakistani founders who've built, tested, validated, proven themselves here, and then are now operating in the UAE or are now operating in Saudi. Yes, yeah. You have Metric, you have Dealcard, MedIQ. Yes, so you have all of these big success stories, and they're now operating at Series A, Series B, which means you're like serious players in the market.
For me, it's like definitely something Morocco can learn from, for like all the Moroccan and African founders. I mean, you need to look up to these amazing founders with like.
But in terms of like industries or sectors that are most viable in Morocco, are those similar to Pakistan? So for instance, like fintech is a big thing here because it gives you
big population, right?
Yeah. Also, it gives you the rails, right, on top of which you can build other things. But if that financial or your fintech isn't.
Actually, there is, I would say the main difference between Morocco and Pakistan that I see, it's Morocco is like it was influenced by French.
Yeah.
We have a brief season of colonization, like 45 years.
And yes, if you're still here, subscribe to the channel. It will help us a lot to grow and it will mean the world to us.
Brief season of
colonization compared to Pakistan is nothing.
Yeah.
Compared to Algeria, that has 125 years. It's like a brief season.
Yeah, a short stint.
Exactly. So it's the impact is there on education, on the mindset of doing business, and so there is like kind of this closeness, so it's like regulate before you innovate, which I find here in Pakistan we have the opposite. So you have the time to innovate, then we can maybe check and regulate later. Even I've seen that the regulator regarding the fintech, it gives some options to like companies so they can do stuff even like out of like it's like very innovative new things that maybe the Pakistani
and you have some very forward-looking regulators like the State Bank, SECP, which have been very, very supportive.
We have this blockage. Even like we are one of the we are the biggest banking system providers in Africa. And so we have our local banks, but the neo-banking and fintech is still happening.
It's still catching up.
It's still catching up, exactly.
Right.
It's still catching up because there is like you need 2 years to get the license. So you have time.
2 years.
2 years to get the license as a bank or as a fintech, as a new.
Which kind of defeats the purpose of innovation, right? Like you gotta move fast, you gotta test fast. Okay.
For me, it's like there is something to learn definitely from the Pakistani ecosystem in that sense.
Yeah.
Even like we had this. The infrastructure is there, but the regulation is not following, and I feel like Pakistan can be like a real inspiration. So I was talking like, I was in the Paris ecosystem, and it's same when there's like a woman CEO or
it's so rare.
At least a woman like in the founding team. It's harder to raise money. I don't know, like bias or gender bias or even like with normally the statistics. Women are better CEOs and are better.
But that's why you need women inclusion at like all levels, right? You need women on the investor side of the table as well, because they understand how a lot of the things that are perceived as disadvantages are actually strengths. To be able to multitask, to be able to lead with empathy, to be able to lead with soft skills. So that's definitely an issue. But I think also numbers and just sheer numbers, the number of female founders that we see entering the ecosystem, then those who go on to raise successfully, those who go on to build successfully. I think there's so much work to be done on all of those stages.
I'll get back to you as Sara Munir. What was the hardest decision you had to make as an entrepreneur yourself? And what's something that really tested your leadership?
Oh, so many things.
Give me one or two.
I feel like talent and building the right systems that support that talent. That's the toughest part of setting up the DNA of any organization.
Don't tell me, I'm struggling.
Because it really requires, but you have to go down to the weeds yourself, and you have to experience those processes yourself at least once to be able to understand where the gaps are.
Bring the wrong people, doesn't work.
Be quick in getting them out. And I took at least 6 to 8 months just fixing things internally before I went out and started to, raise money externally, or, go out for partnerships or partners or, anything.
Fix things first.
Yeah, you have to fix your house first. And that's actually the shittiest and most unglamorous part of the job. But up until those foundations are healthy, you can't build anything on top of it. So it's okay to have a small but competent and mission-aligned team rather than have like a large spread out team that doesn't have a strong culture, that doesn't understand the company's priorities. And then obviously, like any other entrepreneur, financial sustainability is always a challenge. You have to make so much out of so little. And then your fundraise strategies, your marketing strategies, a lot of them have to be responsive to the market. So always being on your feet, always thinking actively, always being on top of trends. I think that's the hill that we're all dying on.
Any tip you can tell me, like me as a founder who are building teams in Pakistan, to maybe get people right as fast as possible about hiring or
I think if people, I would say, this is something that I've tried and it's worked for me in both ways. You have to give people ownership of the end product. As women, and maybe as, at least for me, I feel sometimes it's the tendency to do things yourself is far greater because, it will be quicker, it will be better. But what you're doing is you're robbing the other person of ownership. So giving people that ownership from the get-go kind of tells you if the other person has what it takes. They'll either swim or they'll drown. So you'll know whether you have patience. So be very clear. I'm very organized in how I communicate. I believe in written documentation. I believe in, like laying down systems, because I think it slows you down initially, but in the long term, you have a system that anyone can pick and run. It shouldn't be reliant and tied to one person, because that means you're not building something that can outlast you.
For me, like a good CEO or a good founder has to be as useless as possible at some point.
Yes. And you should have the luxury of stepping away and things not falling apart. And if that's not happening, if you're at the center of every process, every decision, then more than the team, I think you also need to question your leadership style.
Exactly. Lovely. And how, on a personal side, this mission is important to you as Sara?
So, like I said at the beginning, for me, I love supporting people who are passionate and have a purpose. And this job has allowed me to connect to a lot of smart, passionate people who are building with purpose. And when those dots connect, I think impact or being able to create impact is a natural outcome. So seeing someone, get their first business milestone or having more people included in the employment pipeline, helping someone get ready for a raise or just think through a problem. For me, all of that feeds into my definition of impact. It doesn't have to be like $1 million raise or all. It doesn't have to be.
Every step.
Every step counts, and I love solving problems. So when something like
Same.
either doing it directly or helping support somebody else who feels passionately or understands a problem closely enough, I think that has been hugely satisfying to me. And what's good about Pakistan is that you never have to look too far. You talk to anybody and they'll have a side hustle or they'll be building something or they'll be trying something.
That's something I felt here.
And just that exchange.
I want to sell you something because he's doing something, a service, a product.
But that's so
And yes, if you're still here, subscribe to the channel. It will help us a lot to grow and it will mean the world to us.
stimulating, right? Like meeting people who are in it with you, who are in the same boat, navigating similar challenges, trying to crack a similar opportunity. There is so much that we can offer each other. And I think for me, even on tough days, that's what keeps me going.
Amazing. I'll do a rapid fire with you. Worst pitch you've ever heard?
There have been many, but I think
Top of mind.
I don't want to put somebody in the spotlight like that, but often we'll have people who come in with a business pitch, but they have no sense, like there's no financial projections there. So essentially what you're pitching to me is an idea. It's not a business pitch. And I've seen so many of those. They have no idea who their target customer is. Very simple things like
We call that pitch deck founders or pitch deck entrepreneurs.
not even that. Like if you don't have the slightest sense of who your customer is, and by that I mean who is willing to even pay 10 rupees for your product.
Business, yeah.
If you don't know that, then this is not a business. It's just a nice idea.
What keeps you up at night, Sara?
I think the fear of failure.
Really?
The fear of failure. Yes, I
As a person or as a leader?
I think they're all connected, right? The boundaries aren't as clear anymore. I just think that the further you move into your career, if you're someone who genuinely cares a lot about what you do, in a lot of ways, I think for us millennials, a big part of our identity comes from our professions or what we do for a living. So just I think that pressure tends to compound as you move up the ladder, which shouldn't be the case. I don't think that's very healthy. But yes, it does keep me up at night.
Name a startup or industry that you think is overrated
I think
globally.
just using artificial intelligence very loosely is kind of becoming a turnoff for me until I can very specifically understand how it's either making things more efficient for you, or whether you're an AI first company, or whether you're using LLMs to improve things, or what kind of AI are you using and why are you using it. If you're unable to communicate that clearly, it kind of, I think everyone's doing it.
If we give you like $1,000, how would you invest it?
Just 1,000?
Just $1,000.
I would maybe start with something small that I understand very well as a person. Because
So launch a company with $1,000.
yeah,
Okay.
you could. I mean, if you're launching, for instance, if you're taking apparel, you could start off with like a very small SKU sample and just validate the market. So I would take something that's very close to my heart and build a very small inventory and take it to a few customers and see what the response is like. If I've priced it correctly, if I have my audience identified correctly, if my selling strategy is on point. So I don't think you always need like $1 million to build something.
Of course, especially in emerging markets, in a market like Pakistan.
Yeah.
And a word of advice of entrepreneurs who are building in the region for the region, what would you tell them as?
I think one of the key learnings that I've had in the past 2 years about founders who have succeeded and who've done well and who've raised and who've built good businesses, it's not just a stroke of luck or that they're more hardworking than the others. Obviously, that tends to be the case when you're driven by a problem, you tend to work harder. But what I've noticed is that they understand the spaces that they're in like the tip of their fingers, and that either comes from having worked in the industry before. Yeah, either they have some advantage, either their family has been in that space and they understand the cogs and tools of how things move, or they've worked in that industry as a professional before and have seen the problem really closely, or they've experienced the problem themselves. So it's not that random. If you really listen to these founders, listen to their backstories, understand how these dots are connected, I think when you're building something, you need to know that problem better than anybody else, better than any investor, any customer. You need to know its inside outs, things that are working, things that are not working. And if you don't have that kind of proximity to the problem or that kind of obsession with the problem, I think the road, it's not that you won't succeed, but the road becomes much harder.
Or it would take much more time.
Much more time.
And will make you learn.
I feel like entrepreneurship is very glamorized and it's really cool to be a founder, but it's also very hard to be a founder. Very hard and very lonely to be a founder. So unless you are a master of that industry or you're obsessed with that problem, it will become very hard for you to get up and keep going on tough days. But when those things exist, I think you have that capacity to power through and see the big picture and see the opportunity and get on to the other side.
Amazing. Thank you, Sara, for this. I mean, we can talk for hours.
I know.
Maybe we have to have another podcast.
Maybe,
but I want to make it short and try to bring value as much as possible to our audience. Thank you very much for your insights and the openness of sharing some hints about the Pakistani ecosystem and your experience as a leader in this ecosystem. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you.